All right, well, we are 2 o'clock on the hour, and I want to welcome you all to Mylio Photos Coffee Break. My name is Angela Andrieux. I'm a product evangelist for Mylio Photos, which means I help out with education and documentation and pretty much just making sure you guys are successful with the software. You'll see me a lot in the community, moderating things. So I'm always here to answer questions, but today I'm joined by our marketing team lead, Osiris Indriya, and he's going to share with us how to use Mylio Photos with a cloud service. So when you're working with Mylio Photos, Mylio is not a cloud service. We do not have a cloud that hosts your pictures. Your pictures are all on devices that you control. One of those devices can be a cloud service. So what Osiris is going to do is walk you through some of those options and some of the pros and cons of whether that setup is right for you and how to make it happen. So Osiris, welcome so much. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Angela. I know that these have been really loved, these coffee breaks, and thanks for inviting me back. I must
Always
have
welcome.
done okay in the past where I get to come back again. Yeah, so a lot of people who come to Mylio Photos often assume that there's a cloud service backbone to what Mylio does, because that's what almost all other similar apps do. And Mylio is really different, where it is essentially treating the cloud like any other device. And so I have a presentation today to go through a lot of the background information for how Mylio handles cloud, as well as some additional information and how it fits in with other devices. And then some information, as Angela said, to help you decide what might be the right choice for you. Let me see if I can share my slides here. Can you guys see the slides?
Yep.
Perfect. So all of the photos you'll see in here are my photos of clouds over the years. So this one's a little older. You can see it's grainy. So the first goal is understanding cloud as a device. So in order to do that, we need to cover what are device types with Mylio Photos. What does device quality mean? And it's also can be considered like a role. So what service is that device performing in the whole that is your Mylio configuration? And then understanding cloud as an internet connected device. So it's a special kind of device. We're also going to talk about choosing a cloud service. So we're going to cover why have a cloud service, why choose not to have a cloud service, comparing cloud services in Mylio Photos, and then replacing Amazon Drive, because support for Amazon Drive is going away. If you use Amazon Drive, which I have with Mylio Photos for many years, the protocols that they have made available to us that we kind of got grandfathered in because we've been using them for so long, the support for them is ending. And so we're going to talk about what you can do to replace it if you are using it. And if you try to add a cloud service today, Mylio Photos won't even let you add Amazon Drive because of the fact that it's going away. And again, that's a decision by Amazon Drive, not by Mylio. We would have loved to keep working with them. And then we'll go through the process of actually adding a cloud service. And then if I can get things to work correctly, I'm going to show you how you can even do an advanced setup where instead of using your cloud service as a vault, which is the default, and in Mylio we'll explain that, but a vault is where everything goes, including all of your largest original files, all of your videos, everything, to using it just for assisting with sync instead of using only the optimized images. So a lot less data going into the cloud, but you can still get a lot of benefit from having things set up that way. It's not too difficult to do. Sure, go ahead.
You say Amazon Cloud is going away. Is that going away as a service for Mylio Photos or going away entirely? Because I've uploaded a ton of photos to Amazon.
Well, there's Amazon Photos and then there's Amazon Drive. The way we were doing it was using Amazon Drive because when you put encrypted files into the Amazon cloud service, they're not treated as photos because they're not photos for all intents and purposes. They're just taking up a lot of space on the Drive portion. Angela, do you have more details on exactly what's going on with that? Because I don't have too much more detail.
Well, I mean, that pretty much sums it up. So Amazon Drive and Amazon Photos are two separate services. The way you view things on Amazon's website, does appear to be some overlap. Amazon Photos as a separate service is not going away. If you have the Amazon Photos app on your phone and you have things set to back up there, that isn't being unchanged. What is happening with Mylio Photos is we use the Amazon Drive portion, which acts as Osiris mentioned, a cloud connected or internet connected hard drive. And you can put all manner of files up there, not just photos. Unfortunately, they're deprecating that service. It's no longer going to be available. So unfortunately, we can no longer offer it either.
Which is kind of ironic because most other cloud services use their hardware and S3 systems as their cloud services. So
Yep.
they've just decided they're not going to offer it in that way. And they may replace it with something else in the future, who knows? But the way it currently exists will be going away.
Yep.
So let's jump in. So cloud as a device. So I'm taking this right from the manual, which Angela maintains for us and has written the majority of. This is the definition of devices in Mylio. A device refers to a computer, tablet, phone, external drive, or cloud service that contains photos and is synchronized with your Mylio Photos library. So you can group devices into two main buckets, and I'm going to call one bucket viewing devices, which are devices where you install and run the software Mylio Photos. So it's for viewing and managing your Mylio Photos library. It has the user interface. You can interact with it. So that's your computers, tablets, and phones. Things that run software that have a screen where you can use the Mylio software. Then there's storage devices, which are external hard drive, NAS, and cloud services. Those just are managed by a viewing device typically, but they just hold things for you. So it's a location where things are stored. And then the software needs to be run on a viewing device in order to manage the storage devices. So the next thing to know, so those are types, is device quality. So in Mylio Photos, when you're looking at your devices in the dashboard, there's two options, and the default option for all devices when you add them is an auto-optimized device. So Mylio Photos will automatically manage your storage, trying to keep at least optimized versions of your entire library on that device. It does a lot of other great things too. Auto-optimized will also try to keep originals on the device that you added them from, so it doesn't make the assumption that you don't want your originals there, just because it may not be holding any other originals. There's a lot of great things that Mylio does by default, but what it's doing is trying to make sure that you don't run out of space for Mylio and other things you might be using that device for. So if it's a computer, making sure your hard drive doesn't just get filled up right away if you have a large library. So looking at the space available and making sure it gets the right kinds of files in the right places for the things you care the most about, so you can access what's most important to you on that device without using up your space. Whereas a vault device is set to store your entire Mylio Photos library, and that includes all of your original files. So the full original videos, full-size images, if you have RAW, so all of the big files with all the pixels are all going onto a vault device. So this requires a large amount of available storage. Ideally, that one device should have more storage available than your total library size. Now, Mylio, fortunately, is smart enough to handle massive libraries of millions of images and spread it across multiple vaults. That's a different topic for a different day if you fall in that category. But most people, like myself, I have around 70,000 images in my collection, and I have photos of my 44 years of life. And I really mean that because I've digitized slides and got all the way to present with digital cameras and camera rolls. So all of that together, typically I can fit in under 2 terabytes or about 2 terabytes. So I usually have like a 4 terabyte hard drive in order to hold a 2 terabyte library, because you want space to grow. You don't want to be right at capacity. That's just an example. And auto-optimized is not an available setting for cloud services. There's a lot of good reasons for that, but we can't manage cloud services like a local storage device. They aren't the same thing because it's not controlled by your operating system. It's controlled by the service's limitations. So that is typically not an option, but there are things you can do to approximate it. So that's why I say more on this later. So that's device quality. Oops. There we go. So cloud in Mylio is an internet connected device. So that means that cloud services are devices in Mylio Photos. They're managed in your dashboard along with every other device. And it means that they're added and managed in general similarly. So the UI looks almost the same. In a minute, we'll poke around my Mylio so we can see that dashboard. But it treats it very similarly to any other device that Mylio is managing. Cloud services are not required. You can sync and manage your library across devices using Mylio Photos peer-to-peer connections. So if you have 2 devices on your local network, they will find each other most likely right out there on your local network and pass files directly back and forth. They don't need to go out to a cloud like Apple Photos or Google Photos does, where the source of truth is in the cloud. And then everything needs to go to the cloud back and forth in order to make it across to other devices. In Mylio, they transmit directly from device to device. And then if you have your computer on at home and connected to the internet, and let's say you go traveling somewhere in the world where you also have internet, the 2 devices can find each other as long as they're on and Mylio is running across the internet even. So you don't really need a cloud to have the benefits of what you would get with cloud. You do need to have a device on and connected to Mylio that you can connect to even over the internet or on your local network if you want to have that kind of cloud experience. And then cloud services are essentially an always on and always available device. So that's what's handy about them. So even if I leave my computer on and Mylio running and I leave the house, if the power goes out at my house, that device is now no longer available. I can't access anything via Mylio on a device that's no longer on. So cloud services act as always on, always available. So no matter what and where you are, you know you've got a place where you can back up your stuff to, or you can pull down the things that you need using a viewing device. Let's say you only have your phone on you, so you don't have everything on that device. Having a cloud service can keep those items available to be viewed and edited and shared from your phone. So that's pretty handy. Any questions about that before I continue? That was a lot of information. I hope it's not totally new for folks.
There's nothing in the chat, but anybody can feel free to unmute and ask questions if you have some.
All righty. I think we'll continue then.
All righty.
So let's talk about choosing a cloud service for Mylio Photos. So why have one? Just as we discussed, always on access and syncing. So it's a way of assisting sync. It's having multiple locations even potentially to receive an image from. And then you can use a cloud service as remote backup. So remote meaning we have this awesome webinar that we recorded last March on 3-2-1 backup, where you want 3 copies in 2 locations and 1 alternative storage media. No, that's wrong. 3 backups, 2 media types, there we go, and 1 remote location. I got it right.
There you go.
So a cloud service can be the 1 remote location, and it can also be a second storage type, as opposed to like a hard drive, which would be a different storage type on your local machine. So it definitely is a great way to get to a 3-2-1 backup state. Now, backup is a word that, you know, in order to truly have a backup, you would have to use the cloud as a vault. That would mean actually backing up your originals. But in many cases, the optimized version of a file that Mylio makes is almost as good as an original in many, many cases, unless you are a photographer that really likes to have every last pixel available to you to make your perfect edits, to do massive prints. If you're like my dad, who I just set up with Mylio, he would rather only have the optimized versions. He doesn't care about the originals because he just wants it to look great on a screen. He wants to be able to make smaller prints, like 5x7s of his favorite images, and all that can be done with the optimized versions. So why not have a cloud service? Well, some people have privacy concerns. Now, by default, and we'll see this in a minute, Mylio will attempt to set up a cloud service as encrypted. So that means that the data that's being both transmitted and stored is not readable by the cloud service that you are using. So it's just random bits as far as the cloud service is concerned. But it's not like one big blob of bits. They are individual files, and they have a file extension, and that you know approximately the size of that file. So a cloud service would know what types of files you're storing, how many of them you're storing, and approximately how much storage space they're taking up. But none of the contents of the files are readable when we use encryption. So if you don't want another entity to know anything about your library, then you probably don't want to use a cloud service. If you're okay using encrypted and them knowing just some broad general data about your library and you're comfortable with that, then this isn't an issue. And some people really don't care, or they have a service they feel really good about their privacy guidelines and rules. They'll store unencrypted. So that means actually storing the files in a readable format on the cloud service. So Mylio does allow that, but it's not the default. You have to make a decision to not store them as encrypted. And generally, when you add a cloud service to Mylio, it can hinder performance unless you do some really specific things, which I am going to talk about towards the end of this presentation. And the main reason for the slowdown is typically cloud services have a limit on the speed that you can upload to them. Downloads are usually pretty fast, but the upload speeds are a little bit throttled because they're managing, thousands or even millions of users. And it's a lot of data going back and forth. So there's limits on how fast data can move back and forth to a cloud. So you have the limits of your network, the limits of the broader, your internet service provider, the broader internet, all the hops it makes, and then the service provider's servers, how fast they will ingest or transmit information back to you. And if you're sending your original files or big video files, they can seem to take a really long time. In fact, our support team gets a lot of contact about syncing seeming to stop when a cloud service is waiting for videos. It takes a lot of time. So syncing, especially the first time you sync your library, if you add cloud as a vault, that can take days. So it's not a trivial thing to do. It's a good backup. And this is true even if you use other services like Backblaze and things like that. Like getting a backup can take days. It's just how cloud works if you're dealing with large volumes of data.
Yep.
All right. So here we have the various cloud services we currently support. So you'll see here Amazon Drive is now off the list. So today, technically, you can still have Amazon Drive active, I believe. Unless the release has come out that turns it off. Do you know?
It's still there in mine, but you can't add it anymore. So if you added it in the past, you'll still see it. You'll still see it trying to sync, but you can no longer add it as a new device.
And it was the slowest of our options anyway. It's the first one we added, and their protocols definitely were really slow. I used it as my main cloud device for a number of years as a vault backup because I had their unlimited option when they had that available. They took that away a few years ago, but I was able to store everything there, no problem, but it was extremely slow. I contacted our support team many times going, what's going on? I had to quit and restart Mylio a bunch of times and that didn't do anything. It's because that was just Amazon Drive chugging away at big video files. So Google Drive typically is a little faster than OneDrive of the two other available services. And, maybe you already have one of these services available to you. So if you already have a Gmail account, for example, you have a certain amount of Google Drive storage available to you already. Every Google account comes with a certain amount of free storage. If you have the OneDrive, if you have Office 365, that also comes with some amount of OneDrive. So there's information right here about pricing, and I can even make this PowerPoint available later, but you can see where my sources are. And this is pretty easy information to find, but they're not even directly comparable. So Google Drive for $10 a month, which is roughly the cost of Mylio, you can get 2 terabytes of storage. And that's just the storage, right? Here, this requires Microsoft 365 for family in order to get this tier versus personal.
I think that particular tier, when I last looked at it, and you correct me if I'm wrong, it has to do with the number of users, and each user only gets, I think, 1 or 2 terabytes max.
Right. So that's the total for the family with all the users.
Right. So you wouldn't be able to get 6 terabytes to connect with a Mylio account.
Not a single Mylio account, right?
Exactly.
But this is the one I'm currently using, is the personal tier.
And it is worth noting that OneDrive for Business is not compatible with Mylio. Only
that's why
personal.
I put 365 here. So the enterprise version does not work with Mylio, and people ask for that all the time. And the truth is that it can't really work with Mylio. The way that it handles protocols, because it's trying to manage data for large organizations with many, many, many users and permissions and sharing, it's not compatible with what Mylio is doing. Exactly. So there's no plan to add OneDrive for Business in the future. But the personal OneDrive with Office 365 is definitely available. And then you can decide how important performance is. If performance is number 1, then maybe you want Google. And then how much you're willing to spend, and you can see here how things compare, and it's a little complicated. But again, you don't need a cloud service. It just depends how important it is to have the benefits that a cloud service will provide. So for replacing Amazon Drive specifically, the options are to have no cloud service and replace what it's doing with hardware. And the way you would do that is have a piece of hardware like a computer with lots of storage holding your entire library, running Mylio, that's always connected to the internet. And then you essentially have created your own version of a cloud that Mylio will see when you're out and about. But again, if the power goes out or something happens at the location where that particular computer resides and it goes down, then it no longer will work. So it's not the always on. It can be mostly on, almost always on. You could go with, oops, this was supposed to be OneDrive.
I was wondering about that.
Google Drive, OneDrive, and then we also are working on support for Backblaze. It is not out yet. We were aiming to time it with ending support for Amazon Drive. So this is coming in the very near future.
And just a note on the Backblaze, it's not going to be under the same umbrella. So if you already have a Backblaze account that's doing automated backups of your computer, that's a separate service than their cloud drive type service. It would be an additional charge, but it is very reasonably priced. So that's just something to note.
Thank you. And before you get rid of Amazon Drive, if you're in that boat like I was, you should really consider where are your originals first. Like, don't just remove a cloud service. If it's one of the only places where an original lives, because all of your other devices are set to auto-optimized, for example, and it might be your only vault, you don't want to just disconnect that device because you'll lose some originals potentially. So you need to make sure that you've moved any originals off of any cloud service before eliminating it from your configuration. That's very important.
Yes.
And then reconsider if you want your new service to work the same way as your old service. So for me, I chose not to do the same thing. I was using Amazon Drive as a vault. It was crazy slow, drove me nuts. So I made a different choice when I started using OneDrive. which again, I'm going to cover. All right. So in the Mylio interface, this is how you add a cloud service. So just like any device, you start in the dashboard, you go to devices, and then you go to add. And I've actually done this from a phone. So you can do this on a computer or a phone, and it works the same way as far as adding the cloud service.
Harold's asking if there's any chance that we're going to be adding Dropbox. Short answer is we'd like to, but the API for Dropbox is not terribly friendly for what Mylio does. While I hope that we'll add it in the future, it's not something that's near term.
One of the main challenges with Dropbox is they do syncing and they do it differently. So if you have their syncing and our syncing, it can end up in a lot of conflicts. So that's part of the issue there. But it's not a no, but we're not exactly sure the right way to approach it yet. So
exactly. I hope it comes. I use Dropbox as well. So
yeah,
but there are some challenges particular to that service.
Okay, so
same question for iDrive. Do you have any information on iDrive?
I am not aware of any other cloud service that's in the near term besides the Backblaze one.
Okay.
But I know we have a list. People have also, by iDrive, is that a separate service or is that iCloud? Are those the same thing or different things?
I'm not sure. If you could clarify in the chat. If you mean iCloud Drive or if iDrive
on our
is something
list
different.
To look at as well, and iCloud would be easier to implement, we believe, than Dropbox, but I can't say anything about timing.
Gotcha.
Okay, so after you click add here, you'll see this screen, and you would choose this, which is cloud service. Even looks like a nice little cloud icon. And then you would choose from the available services. So right now, these are the only two services available. And then after you choose your service, this is where you have the option to decide whether or not you want your files encrypted. So by default, encrypted is checked. So again, encryption is making it so people cannot see the contents of your files. That's the type of protection it is. And that includes both while it's being transmitted, so as it's passing over the internet to get to the cloud service, and then at rest in the cloud service when it's stored. So the only person who can see the contents of files is another Mylio device that you've logged in with the same account on. It's the only viewable apps will be logged in to the same account. All right, so this is what I wanted to show. So the way I have cloud set up, so I've used cloud with Mylio Photos again for a number of years, and what I have graduated into over time is thinking about cloud as assisted syncing for optimized images specifically. That's what I want it to do. In almost all cases, the optimized image is plenty for everything I need it for. I can edit it, I can share it, I can post it, I can do whatever I want to do with it. Look at it on my screen, show it to someone. It looks pixel perfect as far as anyone can tell. So what I learned, because I've also tried with multiple, is you want a single cloud service if you can help it. If you have Google, let's say you want to do Google and OneDrive because you think it's better, you're backed up to more locations, you've also just compounded the slowness of syncing in your Mylio account. So sending a video to 2 cloud services is definitely crazy. Even if you're only doing the optimized files, that can still be really slow to 2 cloud services. So my recommendation is just pick one. And then set that cloud service to only want the optimized images. And the way that you do it in Mylio requires you to set it at the folder level. So you can even decide, I actually only want to have the cloud have optimized images for these specific folders because I don't care about these other ones. They're stored in the originals or on a computer or a hard drive somewhere. So you can decide which images you want in that cloud service. That also lets you use a lot less storage in the cloud service, so you pay less. And then make sure you're using hardware for your original file. So hardware meaning a viewing device or a storage device that's a hard drive or potentially a NAS. So having it on local hardware that you own and control on your home, in your office, and wherever you have a place where you keep storage devices. And then if you want that experience of cloud for your originals, then you would want to keep one hardware source of originals online with Mylio Photos syncing. Mylio Photos has a background service for Windows and Mac. So you can actually have the app closed, but still have the little icon on. And I didn't prep you for this, Angela, but I was hoping you'd show where you can turn that on if it's not on.
Let me pull that up. Give me a second.
And while you're doing that, the reason why I made all of these choices is it makes syncing dramatically faster. So when I do have videos to upload, it goes all to the right places where I want to store originals, but it's not sending that video to the cloud because videos are not the optimized files. So that really makes things faster when I'm ingesting new images.
Having trouble finding it. I know it's in here somewhere.
Sorry, I didn't prep you for that.
Give me just a second here. Let's see. So that would be the launch Mylio Photos at login, and there's prevent sleep when active.
Yep.
Changes. Here we go. Okay. All right. So I will share my screen. All right. So where I'm at here is under general settings. If I go click out of this up to the more menu, into settings and into general, here at the top, we have a few options. So quit app on close now is off by default. This means that you can close Mylio Photos and it keeps running in the background. You also have the option to launch Mylio Photos at login. So again, this will start it running in the background and syncing while you're doing other things, even if you don't have the Mylio app up and open in front of you. And then prevent sleep when active means it's going to keep your computer from fully going to sleep as long as there are processes happening in Mylio. So those are some settings to take a look at. By default, this is how they're set up. You can change them if you want to. All right.
And then I'll share one more time to show my setup. Here we go. So on New Year's Day, I went and saw a Seahawks game with my dad. This is what's going on here. It was a lot of fun. Since we're talking about clouds, this is a nice cloud picture.
That's nice.
So if I go to dashboard and devices, you can see that I have OneDrive running. And if you look at device quality, it's set to thumbnails. That's not what I said I wanted, right? I said I wanted to be able to have the optimized. It's because you only have these two choices for a cloud service in Mylio. You don't have that auto-optimized option. So this is the first step, is you want to make sure it's not set as a vault. And you can see this would take up almost a terabyte if I was doing it that way, whereas this is only taking 1.71 gigabytes. So I can use much less cloud storage this way. But there's something in the middle, which is what I'll show you in a minute. So if you go to the folder level, what you do here is you can decide which folders you want to have the previews available in your cloud service. So if I say this, which is this local computers picture folder, you can go into the sync settings. This device is happy. There we go. So where did I click? There we go. You click on the words here, and this is where you can choose preview. So what that has done, I've already done this, you can see. So this is how much space that this folder takes up. And I've now set it to do previews for that folder. So you can do it on a folder level. I'm pretty sure that I can select all. Oops, if I click the right thing, nope. So you have to do them one at a time, it looks like, at this level. I'm way up at the top level of folders. So if you click it a few times, that'll take you up to the top level. So if you don't have this sync panel, I believe that's also in settings. Isn't that right, Angela? Where you can
That's correct. It should be visible by default now. That is possible for people to turn it off, and you can turn it back on in settings if you've managed to turn it off in the past.
So again, and you can select a subfolder if you really wanted to, and set it to preview. But I've set every single folder to previews. So OneDrive is getting all the previews for all of my folders. So now I have it acting as that optimized sync assist cloud service that's always on and always connected to the internet wherever I am. And if my computer at home is off and I can't get the original, it's not the end of the world, because the version that's here in preview is usually plenty for almost everything that I need. So that is my hot tip.
Awesome.
And that is also my presentation.
So there are a couple questions here in the chat. Harold would like to know how to make the transition from a cloud device to folders only. So you shouldn't have to do much of a transition. What you'll want to do is make sure you have a vault set up locally. So whether that's an external hard drive or your computer with a lot of storage, make sure that you have a vault that is on a device that you control that is not the cloud. And then if you wanted to get rid of, at that point, Amazon Drive, you'd want to go to the sync panel, make sure everything is fully in sync and that all of your images are protected to local drives, not just the cloud. And then you can go ahead and remove that cloud storage. And let's see here, another question. If I'm understanding correctly, I can only add cloud services that have been engineered, designed as options in Mylio Photos. That's correct. We have right now Google Drive and Microsoft OneDrive that are possible. We'll be adding Backblaze soon. And we have a list of other services that we hope to add in the future, but no ETA on those just yet. And then Harold says, how do you exclude folders? As far as doing to cloud drives, you would just go in where Osiris was just showing in the sync panel, clicking on, say, OneDrive or Google Drive. If you didn't want to have smart previews there, you would just change that to thumbnails. And if you wanted to have originals, you could choose originals.
Yeah, you can select that folder within the folder, and then you can override the setting.
Yep.
So you could set the top level to be previews, and then within that go in and set an individual folder to whatever you would like to have. And
then by default, every device that you add, including a cloud service, is going to have some degree of thumbnails. It's going to have all of your thumbnails. So you're going to have your thumbnails, and then you tell it how much smart previews you want, or you can change it to be a vault to hold everything. So that's completely in your control. How much storage do I need? Thumbnails, enhanced, original. What does enhanced mean? That I have edited the photo. All right. So the amount of storage that you need really depends on the size of your library. My library is close to 4 terabytes. You saw that Osiris's was about 2. We have people who have 15, 20 terabyte libraries. That just, it really depends on how much media you have and the type of media. So to see how much storage you need, you can just go into the dashboard, and I can do that really quick and show you here with mine. Give me just a second to pull that up. All right, and I'm going to go into dashboard and into devices, and I'm just going to scroll down here to my vault. And if I click into device quality, you can see here, and this is a vault here, and it's taking up, if I wanted just thumbnails, it'd be 2.19 gigabytes. And if I wanted to set it up as a vault, it'd be 2.451 terabytes. So this is the total size of my library right now. So I would want to have a 3 to 4 terabyte drive at least, so I have room to grow. So that's where you can find that out. All right. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Is there any benefit that you can see to, if you already use Backblaze to back up your computer and external hard drive, to add that on this the cloud service when it becomes available, or is there any benefit to diversifying that, you know, you have Backblaze doing that and you have Google Drive as the cloud service?
So the big thing there, so I use Backblaze as a full computer backup as well, because there's more on my computer than just Mylio, right? Most of us have other important files that are going to be outside of that. You want to have that backed up as well. So that for me is where Backblaze comes in really handy, is that's my offsite backup for everything. As far as using a cloud service with Mylio, what that does is it gives you more options for your syncing and accessing things while you're remote. So if you don't have a computer that you can leave on at home, and let's say you have only a laptop, you take that with you, but your drive with all your images is at home, you're not going to be able to access all of those originals because they're on the drive at home. Having a cloud in that option is going to give you the option to sync up with those originals, even when you're away from your home.
And is there any benefit of doing it all under the roof of Backblaze, or, you know, having the one Blaze, you know, service of backup and then like your cloud service on Google Drive? Is there any benefit either way?
It would operate pretty much the same. Your benefits would be exactly the same whether you're using Google Drive or using Backblaze. It's just a matter of the cost and which service you would prefer to use. Mylio Photos, our application cannot access the full computer backups. So if something happened to your Mylio Photos or happened to your computer, you'd have to get everything back from Backblaze, including all of those Mylio files, to get back up and running. If you had a vault locally on your desk, you could plug that into a new computer, and at least Mylio would be back up and running while you're waiting for, you know, everything else to download from Backblaze.
Right. That's the difference with vaults and Mylios. They're essentially active, like they can be used immediately. And if you use an external hard drive, like Angela just said, you can attach it to any computer. And if you install Mylio, and Mylio will recognize that and go, oh, this already has everything there, because it doesn't just hold all your files, it holds all the library and catalog information. Like it's a complete encapsulated Mylio library on that hard drive, which is really, really handy.
Yeah. And so that's what having that information in the cloud separate, directly connected to Mylio Photos also does for you. So it gives you a different type of access. So I recommend having both, but it's absolutely not required. You can function well without it too.
Some users have found handy is to have a vault you only connect occasionally. So if you accidentally delete like a whole folder of images in Mylio, or even outside of Mylio, you're in the file system and you accidentally reformat a drive you didn't mean to reformat. I mean, things happen, right? When get confused, everything's complicated. There's so many things going on. If you've only synced that vault occasionally, you'll have one that's not connected to Mylio that you can use to rebuild the missing files. I would recommend that you contact support before connecting that, because you want to make sure that Mylio doesn't sync the deletions onto that vault that you've held out. So, or I'm not sure if the manual has information on that specific scenario, because it's kind
not
of
that one.
But you can definitely contact support and say, here's the situation. I accidentally deleted something, but I have a vault with half those files on it. Help me get them back. And they know exactly how to do it.
Yep.
So in fact, our head of product has a hard drive that I believe he puts in safe deposit box. So it's like protected from fire and all that stuff that he syncs only occasionally, and he rotates them. So he puts one in and takes that one back out. So it'll be so he can keep rotating them through, but there's a drive he's keeping over there. So depending on how hardcore you want to be, but as soon as you plug that vault in, it's going to work as if it's always been there. It'll synchronize and be up to date and ready to go.
And so Larry's asking, how do I see the size of my smart previews? I believe you have to do that on a folder by folder basis. So where Osiris was showing you to click on a particular drive in the sync panel, and you can choose auto optimize, smart previews, and originals, it'll tell you how much space each option is going to take. All right. Are there any questions that I missed?